Welcome back to the class on international business communication. We were talking about conflict last time. We were discussing different things. We talked about what conflict is. We talked about how conflict occurs. We talked about how conflict comes up and how people deal with conflict. We will discuss the negotiation and conflict management again today. We will discuss what negotiation is and what are the different strategies for conflict management. Okay, some revision. What is the connection between, please discuss amongst yourselves what the connection between convincing, compliance, reasoning, persuasion and conflict is. I would also like you to discuss the implications of communication climate and communication rules in the generation and resolution of conflict in the following situations. How does this affect superior subordinate communication? How does this affect intercultural communication? That is something I'd like you to discuss before we move on. We will now talk about, we were talking about how people handle conflict. We talked about different strategies for handling conflict. We talked about people being evasive, people being estranged, people accommodating, people adjusting to what other people are saying and then accommodating and then sort of handling conflict accordingly. We talked about patronizing, where they say, I will help you, but I will help you with a cost to myself, and I'm going to make sure you know that I'm taking a hit for you. Or people can be assertive. People just say it's my way or the highway. It's a conflict. I will have my way no matter what. Consolidating, where people give equal consideration to both views in a non-disruptive way. And begrudging, where people consider both views but in a disruptive manner. You say, okay, I'm going to do it, but I don't like what I'm doing. I don't like acknowledging your viewpoint, but I seem to have no choice. But it doesn't mean that I will not take my own point of view into account. Now, the difference between patronizing and begrudging is, in patronizing, I will let you have whatever you want. I will let you take whatever you want, but I will always hold a grudge against you, and I will say, or I will keep reminding you that, remember, on so and so occasion, or you had your own way. I let you have your own way. In a begrudging kind of situation, I'll say, okay, we both will do it, but I'm not comfortable being in this conflict. I'm not comfortable dealing with this. We will deal with our issues, but I'm just not comfortable with the situation. So that's begrudging. And of course, these are some of the ways. None of whatever I say is exhaustive. Please believe me when I say this. Nothing in the social sciences is ever exhaustive. Nothing can really cover the entire gamut of reactions, entire range of emotions or activities that we have. So that is what I wanted to bring to your notice. It is just not possible to cover everything in the social sciences. Human nature is so unique, so diverse, so dynamic, that everything is constantly changing. So nothing that I say is ever going to be exhaustive. You as human beings will always have, you as people who are experiencing different things, people who are evolving, who are involved in different kind of interactions, will always have something to add to whatever I'm telling you, and that's okay. All right. Some more approaches to conflict management. You could approach conflict directly, or you could approach it indirectly. Indirect conflict management approaches could be, you reduce the interdependence between two people. If interdependence is a cause of the conflict, you reduce the interdependence, and in order to do that, you decouple, which means you take action to eliminate or reduce the required contact between the two conflicting parties. You say, okay, the interdependence is causing the problem, let's remove the interdependence, let us remove the reason for this conflict. Buffering is building an inventory or buffer between the two groups so that any output slowdown or excess is absorbed by the buffer and does not directly pressure the target group. So you create a buffer and you say that, okay, there is a mediator, there is something that will help you vent your steam before you reach the other party. You create a buffer between the two people, give them more work, interdependence is the same, but the amount of time they spend on the interdependence could be reduced. The number of people who are involved in that interdependent activity could be reduced. So the intensity of interdependence is the same, but that the other stuff could be reduced. Linking pin roles is another thing here. You assign people to serve as formal linking pins between groups that are prone to conflict. You could have project liaisons. You say if you want to talk to each other, you have to go through this person. It's not a buffer, but there is a linking pin. There is somebody who is more neutral to the whole situation than these people are, and that can help reduce the interdependence, and that can help sort of mitigate the consequences of the conflict. Another indirect strategy could be you appeal to common goals. You could refer it to hierarchy, or you could alter scripts and myths. Now, what do we mean by altering scripts and myths? This means that you change the interpretation of the situation, or you encourage the parties to change their interpretations of the situation. You encourage the parties to alter what they believe about the issue that is being discussed or that is being conflicted, that is causing the conflict. When we say script, we are essentially talking about a concept they have in mind. Their description of the conflict situation is the script. Myth is the assumptions. It could be right, it could be wrong, but most often these assumptions are exaggerated versions of the reality. So when we talk about altering scripts and myths, we say, why don't you question your assumptions? Why don't you relook at your assumptions? Why don't you reconsider your assumptions in light of some more research about the other party, some more research about the issue, some more introspection about what you really want out of this situation? And when you do that, then you realize that maybe it's not such a bad situation after all, or maybe time has healed all, or maybe your priorities have changed. And so you alter the definitions of the issue and what the issue means to you, and or to the parties involved, and how important it is to the parties involved, and that can help reduce the amount of conflict between these parties. Some direct approaches to conflict management are, you could have a lose-lose conflict when nobody really gets what they want. So it's sort of, it is a situation in which both the parties end up losing, both the parties end up giving up something. Avoidance occurs, you could make both the parties suffer for want of a better word. You could make both the parties suffer for being in a conflict situation. Avoidance occurs when everybody pretends that the conflict does not really exist and hopes that it will go away. Two people are interdependent on each other, they are conflicting. So you remove the reason for interdependence. It could be a common project, and you say, because you are fighting so much, let's just end the project here. Everybody loses. You lose your benefits, you lose your professional credibility maybe, or reputation, or the progress of your progress towards your next position could be slowed down. But you are fighting so badly, you say, okay, this ends right here, and you avoid it. Remove that. It's a lose-lose conflict. Everybody stands to lose, both the stakeholders stand to lose, and you just pretend that it doesn't exist. Let's not work on this for some more time, or let's stop interacting for some time. Yes, we will lose some amount of money, we will lose some amount of we will not be able to make any more progress on this project, but let's just let it sit for a while and it will go away. Accommodation or smoothing involves playing down differences among the conflicting parties and highlighting the similarity and areas of agreement. Now you'll say, how could this be a lose-lose conflict? The manner in which this is a lose-lose conflict is that when you accommodate to each other party, you let go of a little bit of what you want, and you say, okay, I will adjust to your needs. I will let go of 20% of what I want, you also let go of 20% of what you want, and sort of, both of us are not really satisfied, but at least we are friends with each other, at least we are in a longer working relationship with each other. Compromise occurs when each party gives up something of value to the other, and you say, okay, you want something I have, here, take it, and I'll take what you want, what you have that has more value for me, and we will come to an agreement where both of us feel satisfied. The difference between accommodation and compromise is that compromise is a little more satisfying than accommodation or smoothing, where you say, in smoothing you say, we accept that we are different, we will cut the portions that are causing this problem, so we both stand to lose a little. What we really gain out of the situation is the long-term relationship. We have to work with each other, so let's just work on areas that matter most to both of us, and let's just let the other things be. In a compromise, we say we try and fit everything together and sort of, we'll find common ground and build a more consolidated, more tight kind of situation. Win-lose conflict is one party achieves its desires at the expense and to the exclusion of the other party's desire. Again, fewer resources, one person gets the resources, one person doesn't. That is a win-lose conflict. We have competition is one such type of conflict where one party achieves a victory through force, superior skill or domination. So, competition, there are a few, one person has to get the contract, everybody applies. Open competition, you have superior skills, your contracts are, your tenders are viewed, they are assessed, and one person gets the contract and the other person doesn't, and it's based on what you present to the deciding people. Authoritative command is a formal authority that simply dictates a solution and specified what is gained and what is lost by whom. And people are fighting, and then the boss says, the person next in hierarchy says, you know what, we've had enough of this. X gets what he wants, Y does not get it. There's just one of this. You get promoted and you don't because you're fighting too much, or you get promoted, you don't because so and so's skills are superior than yours, and I'm saying this because I have the authority to put my foot down and end this conflict here and now. Win-win conflict is a blend of high cooperation and assertiveness. Both lay whatever they want down on the table and both say, yes, this is what we want, this is what we can stand to lose without very much discomfort to either of us. And then you say, okay, let's get together and build something new out of this collaboration. It's not really about losing, it is about creating more value out of the common resources. So we are conflicting, but let's find more meaning into this difference and let's build something positive. And that's where collaboration or problem solving comes in. You recognize that something is wrong and needs attention, and then both the parties get together and build on that. And now I'm taking you back to, I forget the lecture number, but we had a lecture on collaboration. So it's all interconnected, like I told you in the last lecture. It is all interconnected. You can always take any slide back to any other slide, or any part of any lecture back to any other part of any other lecture and connect it. That's how messy and difficult this course is, but it's all very applicable, so I hope you're enjoying it as much as I am. Okay, negotiation. We were talking about conflict management. Negotiation. What is negotiation? It is a skill that helps you get what you want from others without alienating them. It is a process whereby people with different or even opposing needs can arrive at a fair agreement. We will talk about a different kind of negotiation where people tend to get alienated, but that really doesn't qualify as a, it does qualify as a negotiation, but again there is some discussion involved. But what really happens is that in negotiations, it is a skill that you develop that helps you get what you want without necessarily making the other party uncomfortable. This is from a book called Messages by McKay, Davis and Fanning. I'll put that in the references. Okay, why do you need to learn about negotiations? We need to learn about negotiations because negotiations are applicable in daily life. We have negotiations in the business environment. Now let's talk about our daily lives. What happens when you get up in the morning? Typical thing to do in India is first thing in the morning people go out for a walk and they buy milk and vegetables and bread and eggs on their way back. And so you have vegetable vendors sitting there with fresh veggies early in the morning. You have people selling milk and bread and eggs in the morning, and people generally just walk and sort of pick these things on the way back for a fresh home cooked breakfast. What happens when you go there? Bread, eggs, milk, pretty much standard rates. What happens with vegetables and fruits? Haggling, bargaining. Person says, I just plucked it from the field just half an hour ago, and this is as fresh as it gets. And you say, no, this is stale, and because it is stale, I will give you 10 rupees lesser than what you're asking for it. And he says, no, this is fresh. And then you point out to some dead leaf and you say, see, I told you had plucked it yesterday, you're lying. And so this constant negotiation goes on. You come home and the lady in the house says, I'm going to make breakfast that caters to the choice of 3 out of the 5 people in the family. And you say, what about my choice? And she says, you can have your choice at lunchtime or dinner time, take your pick. I can't make it right now. I have to cater to the younger, maybe kids are there, and she says, I have to make their breakfast. They have a test, so I'll make their favorite breakfast so they do well in the test. And so, so these things happen in our daily lives. When you come to negotiations in the business environment, we negotiate over everything. We negotiate over what we want, over our roles in the organization. This is what I'm being paid to do. This is as much as I will do. This is what I will not do. This is what I was hired for. Why am I being given less work? Why am I being given more work? Why am I being given less responsibility than my peers? Why am I being given larger workload than my peers? When am I going to get my promotion? All of these things. Okay, the bottom line is that negotiations form the basis for creation and maintenance of successful relationships. So what this really means is that unless and what are we essentially talking about here? We are essentially talking about the negotiations of the satisfaction of communication rules. How satisfied are we with the way people are dealing with us? How satisfied are we with the manner in which we are getting what we really want from our environment or from the people who we are interacting with? We have talked about reasons why people communicate. We communicate only when we have something that we want to bring back to normal, or there's something that is not happening in the environment that is to our liking, or we need something, we need people to do something for us. We have all these intentions attached. I mean, that will be taking us back to lecture 1, so I'm not going to give you too much detail about it. But again, when we talk to people, depending on our satisfaction with how they respond to us, we create, we maintain, we build relationships. And communication is the bottom line for that. It is the basis for the creation and maintenance of any relationship. Key ingredients of negotiations, the parts of negotiations. In any negotiation situation, you have 2 or more independent participants. Each has some individual goals that may be partially incompatible. They are involved in some form of process. There are alternatives that are generated with the purpose of agreeing upon them. Okay, some elements of negotiations. You could have context, basic element of negotiation. Context is what all kinds of negotiations rest on. Norms are regarding acceptable behavior of negotiators, what they can and cannot do, what they are allowed and not allowed to do, how they are supposed to, we had a discussion on norms in a previous lecture. Issues, why negotiations, goals, what is desired, specific measurable outcomes are the goals, why are we negotiating, what led to this need for negotiation are the issues, goals are what do we want at the end of it. Okay, next, some key concepts in negotiations. The first one is the zone of possible alternatives. I want you to be comfortable with these issues or with these concepts before we move on to anything in the forthcoming slides. Zone of possible alternatives is the area or range in which a deal that satisfies both parties can take place. So it is the range of alternatives, it is the range of solutions, it is the range of the solutions to a problem. It is the zone of possible, we call it the zone of possible alternatives, or ZOPA for short. Value creation through trade is when a party has something they value less than the other party does. And so what happens is, I have something that means more to you, you have something that means more to me, and we sort of talk with each other and we figure out what matters more to us. If I have something that is of more value to you, I give it to you in exchange for something that you have that is not of as much value to you as it is to me, and you give that to me. So it's a symbiotic kind of interaction. Reservation price is the walkaway or the bottom line. Batna is the best alternative to a negotiated agreement. It is, Batna is, what will I do if this negotiation falls through? If I don't get what I want out of this, you are not complying with me, we are not coming to an agreeable solution, we have tried to talk and things have not worked for us. So what are the other alternatives I have if I am not able to come to a workable solution with you? And that is the Batna. The range of Batnas really determines how well you negotiate and how confident you feel about your negotiation. Okay, some elements of negotiation. Again, we have bargaining mix, which is another one. How is, we have bargaining mixes. How will you negotiate, or how do you negotiate? It is the explanation of negotiator priorities. It could include opening, the target, resistance point, and Batna. This is what I have if the negotiation falls through. So opening is the ideal outcome desired, target is the satisfactory outcome acceptable, resistance point is the reservation price, and Batna is what I have if the negotiation falls through. Okay. Some more elements. We have strategy, which is the overall approach that considers the importance of the substance of the negotiation to the negotiator, the other party's relationship to the negotiator, the substance to the other party, the relationship to the other party. All this is part of strategy. These in turn affect the stages and the roles of negotiators. These also affect the communication process or the sequence of communication moves, and these also affect the decision making processes. They also affect the product or end result of the negotiation. So what we are essentially trying to say is that we have all these different elements of negotiations. We have all these concepts in negotiation, and we have strategies, and we have the bargaining mix, and we have processes. And negotiation is a very, very specialized skill, and I can only give you a very brief description of whatever is a part of negotiation. I cannot really describe everything to you. It has been talked about by many people. There are mathematical models to explain negotiations. There are all kinds of specialized manners in which negotiations take place and should take place, but we can't really touch upon all of those here. All I can tell you is a little bit about the communication side of negotiations and conflict management. Okay. Dimensions of a negotiation situation. We have 3 dimensions primarily. Again, this is based on the 3D model that was proposed by Lax and Sibelius in 2003. It's the tactics, which involves the people and processes. Deal design is value and substance. Setup is scope and sequence. So when we talk about tactics, we are essentially talking about the what people do in a negotiation situation, and tactics are what people do in a negotiation situation. It deals with how people use processes to deal with negotiation situations. Deal design is what they want or how they structure the value and substance in a negotiation situation. I'm sorry about the noise in the background, there seems to be some problem outside. Setup is about scope and sequence, how you structure various negotiation activities, what comes first, what comes next, who says what first, or So how do you sort of deal with the sequence in which the negotiation activities take place, and where and when do you sort of meet the other party, how do you meet the other party, what you say, how you say it, how do you present your points of view, how do you assess their issues, all of that constitutes part of the setup. Okay, some stages of negotiation. You have preparation is the first stage, where you decide on the goal, you decide on what is important, the relationship or the end result, you decide on the range of acceptable solutions or areas of compromise, you decide on the reservation price, you list your resources, you know or find out the above for the opponent or the other party, and then you prepare yourself and then you go into the negotiation situation. Then comes the discussion part, where with the other party you discuss with the other party regarding mutual interests and needs, and you find out more about what the other party wants at this stage. Proposal, counter proposal is the real negotiation with offer and feedback regarding acceptability, and agreement and disagreement forms the basis for future negotiations. Satisfaction and dissatisfaction with the process, result and inter-party relationship. This will in turn lead to the preparation for future negotiations. So when we talk about proposal and counter proposal, we are essentially talking about the feedback we get from the other party in terms of what we say to them. We start the negotiation with something that we are well prepared to give, and then the other party also starts with what they are willing to compromise on, and it may not match our needs. And so in and through feedback, in and through communication, in and through conversations, we decide, we discuss, we figure out what we can afford to let go of and where we draw the line and walk away from the negotiation. And that is really the proposal counter proposal part of this. Agreement, disagreement, both parties could be satisfied, that is the ideal situation. One party could be more satisfied than the other party, or one party could be completely dissatisfied and the other party has their own way, and that will in turn determine how satisfied both parties are with the negotiation situation and how they deal with the negotiation situation in future with the same party, any kind of negotiation situation. How do you prepare for negotiations? Be confident but not overconfident. So collect the information, consider the opposite, find a devil's advocate and don't be afraid to ask. This is from a paper by Moore published in 2007. I will give you the reference to it in the list of references. You collect the information, know what you know. If you don't know something, just don't be overconfident. You will never be able to find all the information there is to find out. And in that case, know what you know and be prepared for some surprises. Also consider that the other party may really have a genuine reason for saying and doing what they are saying and doing, and in that case they may not necessarily be wrong, and so you have to consider that also. And don't be afraid to ask, and find a person who can help you see the other party's position in a very positive light, and that can help you strengthen your own position. Prepare, question your assumptions and re-evaluate your overall attitude towards negotiation. Again, prepare well. What are you assuming? Why are you assuming what you're assuming? Figure out your overall attitude towards negotiations, towards this negotiation. Do you really want to go into it? Are you really going to be comfortable with it? Make sure you've engaged the right parties in the right talks. Find the right people who are really open to negotiating, and prepare to create value by assessing outside alternatives and possible proposals, and by assessing your ZOPAs. Increase your ZOPAs, increase your BATNAs, and you will be okay. Increase your zone of possible alternatives. Don't be too flexible, but again have a wider range, as wide a range of possible alternatives as possible, and as wide a range of the alternatives to a negotiated agreement. You will feel stronger if that is the case. some rules of principled negotiation. This is about the actual negotiation process. Once you've started negotiating, separate the people from the problem. Believe that people are decent, people are reasonable, be flexible, believe that you all have legitimate interests. People don't come into a situation with a negative, they don't usually come into a situation with an intention to hurt somebody else. So believe in the niceness of human nature. Believe that people are asking for something because they legitimately want to have something, not because they want to hurt you. You know, that puts you on a different platform, and you say, yes, I wanted to have a legitimate reason. I'm not trying to hurt you, you're not trying to hurt me. We have other reasons for coming to the situation, we have other reasons for disagreeing, and then move from that point. And it's not, I may dislike you, but the problem is a problem, and that has nothing to do with what I think of you. Understand the people, empathize, but don't project your fears, biases, etc. Listen actively and be sensitive to feedback. Again, put yourself in the other person's shoes, but don't project your fears. Don't let them be a part of your discussions. You may be scared of some situations, you may not want to take risks. But again, if the situation demands, be prepared to take some risks, be prepared to be flexible, be prepared to accept other person's point of view, and empathize and put yourself in the other person's shoes, but don't let them walk all over you. Listen actively and be sensitive to feedback. So, and that will help you. Why? Because that will help you come up with a better counter proposal to whatever they are saying, and link up whatever they are saying with your own needs and goals. Okay. State the problem in terms of interests in appropriate measure at the appropriate time in as much a factual manner as possible. Again, state the problem in a manner that is as factual, as proper as possible. State it at a time when it should be stated, and limit the scope or define the scope appropriately. You know, this is the problem, it's not bigger than this, it's not smaller than this. List your options, prefer growing the pie to splitting it. Again, if the pie is bigger, everybody gets to have a larger piece of it. Brainstorm for options and turn options into approvable proposals. Everybody should want to agree to whatever is being proposed. Factors affecting negotiations. What can affect the outcome of negotiations? There could be legal pressure. You may be governed by law to negotiate, and not really, or the rules of the organization that you're in may mandate that you negotiate and come to a workable solution. There could be investment criteria. Again, the size of investment, what the material gains that people are expecting from that negotiation situation could be a factor in determining how negotiations take place. The common goal could be a factor, so that is very, very essential. You know, what the common goal is, the size of the common goal, the stakes that are that people have in the common goal. Behavior of negotiators is another one where the strategic behavioral mimicry and adaptation is a factor. Again, it is not about aping the other person, it is also about adapting to the other person's style of negotiation. Culture and training of negotiators is another one that forms the basis, as we talked about in the previous slides. Actually, I have them here, so I'm going to take you back to this slide. In conflicts, we talked about antecedent conditions, and so we are essentially talking about the background of the conflict situation, and we are talking about negotiation as a means of resolving conflict, and that is what I'm referring to over here. So, you know, the culture and training of negotiators, what their background is, how trained, how well trained they are to deal with this conflict situation. Maturity of a problem, again, similar things that are, you know, things that impact the outcome of a conflict are also things that impact the outcome of any negotiation situation. How old the problem is, how rigid the negotiators are, how long have they been at it, what is the size of the problem, all of that stuff, and the persistence of negotiators, the unwillingness to withdraw till the satisfactory resolution of the issue. That is another issue in, or another factor that affects the outcome of any negotiation. Two main types of negotiations. You have competitive or distributive negotiation, where one wins, the other loses. We have collaborative or integrative negotiation, where both lose a little and win a little, overall a win-win situation. We were talking about the different approaches to conflict resolution. You have win-lose, win-win, it's similar. These things are parallel, they are overlapping to quite an extent. So, in a distributive negotiation, HBE stands for Harvard Business Essentials. It's a booklet that I referred to, and I got this information from there for you. It is characterized by win-lose. The seller's goal is to negotiate as high a price as possible, and the buyer's goal is to negotiate as low a price as possible. The less the other side knows about your weaknesses and real preferences, and the more it knows about your bargaining strength, the better will be your position. So, you are trying to negotiate a situation, or you are trying to figure out a situation where you get maximum out of minimum input, and that is pretty much what the distributive negotiation is all about. It is characterized by win-lose. One party wins, the other party loses. The party that wins is the seller's goal is to negotiate whatever the maximum he can get out of the situation, and buyer wants to invest the minimum. The less the other side knows about your weaknesses and real preferences, and the more it knows about your bargaining strength, the better will be your position. You make it known to the other side that you have a wide range of batnas. You make it known to the other party that, you know, this is important, but it's not everything. The lesser they know about where you stand, the more they know about or the more they know about your confidence in the bargaining, the better it is for you. Collaborative negotiations, as opposed to distributive negotiations or competitive negotiations, are characterized by win-win. Both parties are willing to lose a little and gain a little. You change the pie. This is what this is all about. In a win-lose situation, the pie is standard. It is fixed. The size is pretty standard. The shape is pretty standard. In a win-win situation, people are more flexible. There is scope to change the shape and size of the pie, metaphorically speaking. In more clear terms, what we are saying is that the goal is negotiable. What the goal is, you know, the quality, the quantity of what you can get out of this situation is negotiable. And so you change that, you change your perceptions about what you will be satisfied with, and that will lead to an increase in the size and a change in the shape of the pie, and both can win more than they expected to. Since the common goal is collaboration, openness regarding bargaining strength is encouraged on both sides. Now, because you want to collaborate, it's always, people are always encouraged to lay their strengths and resources and limitations out on the table as far as possible. Again, you can't disclose everything to the other party, but whatever you can without getting hurt should be put on the table, and it's encouraged, and it usually culminates in a long-term relationship. Distributive negotiation, what happens is that since one party wins and the other loses, there is discomfort, and that usually sort of ends after the negotiation situation is over. But in a collaborative negotiation, it usually ends in a more long-term relationship. How do you succeed at distributive negotiations? Now I'm getting too prescriptive. We were talking about not prescribing. In this lecture, I'm going to prescribe a few things. Again, I would like you to take these ideas and sort of, you know, go back and think more about them. But how do you succeed at distributive negotiations? The first offer principle, you start right. Don't disclose your options. Just make it clear that you have some options. Zero in on the other party's deal makers and deal breakers. Again, this is from HBE. This is, sorry. Okay. This is H. I'm sorry about this. What I should really do is put the year here. I'm sorry, I should have put it. Okay. So it is from Harvard Business Essentials, published in 2003. Zero in on the other parties, deal makers and deal breakers. Make sure that you know what they will compromise on, what they will agree to and what they will not agree to. Use the above information to make your first offer. Don't overshoot the mark. Don't give them an option that is going to be so large that they don't want to agree to it. Again, some corrections here. I apologize. This should have been done before the class began. Okay. Some more tips about succeeding at collaborative relationships, collaborative negotiations. Clearly lay down the goals, limitations and resources available for mutual benefits. What do you want? Try to maximize returns for your own client, inducing any joint gains available. Focus on common interests of the parties and try to understand the merits. Use non-confrontational techniques and remain open to persuasion on substance. And be oriented to qualitative goals. You know, you want to negotiate as fair an agreement as possible. You want as durable a relationship as possible. So just lay things down and focus on the problem, focus on building more value from the situation, and you should be okay. Some tactics that people engage in as far as negotiation is concerned, we have traditional competitive bargaining, where you hide your bottom line, make an inflated opening offer and not disclose your walkaway alternative and sort of slowly come down. Another tactic that people engage in is emotional manipulation. You feign feelings such as anger, fear, disappointment, elation or satisfaction, and you say, oh my God, you're hurting me so much. Bargaining is what we do. We start with a very high offer and then slowly come down. It is way beyond what we expect. We slowly come down. Emotionally appeal to the person's emotions, make them feel guilty, make them feel sad. Not right, but again, you know, you decide what works for you in which situation. Misrepresentation is another one, where people distort the information or events in the negotiation to others, and they sort of, usually exaggeration is a form of misrepresentation. They'll present the problem as much bigger than it really is to get maximum sympathy, maximum benefit out of the situation. Misrepresenting to your opponent's network is another one that people do. You tell your opponent that they aren't good people, or they aren't sort of doing what they have been expected to do, and that is what people normally that is something that people tend to engage in. You share your bargaining position more with the opponent's network. Inappropriate information gathering, you use bribery and infiltration and spying. Again, by definition, this is unethical, but people do it. Bluffing, you make threats or promises that you don't intend to carry out, or telling your opponent that only you can fulfill his or her needs. So you say, I'm the only one who can help you. Don't you know this? You have no other alternatives but me for this particular benefit. And people tend to believe you, and that's not really right. But these are some of the tactics people engage in. Again, what is right, what is wrong, you decide. Okay. Culture in negotiations. Culture could help increase the size of the pie. We build on the differences in diversity. We build on the different positions of strengths we bring to the diverse situation, and we try and increase the size of the pie by tapping into individual, unique, rich resources on both sides. Culture could also lead to misunderstandings too, due to difficulties with appropriate interpretation, as we just discussed earlier. Some cultural variations in conducting business. We could have a negotiation. In a negotiation atmosphere, the atmosphere is culturally determined. Where, when and how of negotiation are culturally determined, and that is controlled by culture, and that can impact the antecedent conditions for the conflict, and that can impact the antecedent conditions for the negotiation situation. It can, negotiation situation, it's a sort of a tongue twister here. It can impact what we think we know about the other party's situation. Detail is another one, depth versus breadth, culturally determined. How wide do you want to spread yourself? How deep do you want to go? It influences goals and interests of both the parties. Communication styles is another one, the goals versus public image. What do you want to appeal to will be influenced by culture, whether you want to focus on the goals or the relationship. Selection of negotiators, do you want to select negotiators based on their status versus their expertise or individual skills? Do you want to select a senior person because he or she is senior, or and do you want to sort of maintain their public image, or do you want to select a more junior person who's more trained in negotiating in that particular field? Decision making, again, problem solving, you could compartmentalize or contextualize, you could solve many issues in relation to contextualization is solving the issues in relation to each other, in relation to the context. Compartmentalization is solving one issue at a time and then looking for relations between them and resolving those relations one at a time. So how do you make your decisions? Organizational structure is again determined culturally. The time you spend on pre-negotiations, actual negotiation and implementation of negotiated decisions. Negotiating effectively, you could use effective body language, use in the intra and interpersonal aspects, use effective body language, use of non-ambiguous, non-verbal signals. Hand over mouth is another one that can have a negative effect on people. People can think that you're trying to evade them. You scratch your nose, you fail to make eye contact, and people think that you are sort of trying to evade something. You should use your voice persuasively. Build your credibility, develop your rapport, listen creatively, and persuade with logic and reason, and win over other people with emotion. As far as preparation is concerned, know things about the other side, know your bargaining power, know what is important, know with whom you are negotiating, know the people who work for the people you negotiate with, develop compelling positions and evidence, understand and address your counterpart's problem as a means to solving your own, acknowledge that money isn't the only goal, and focus on the relationship, the social contract, the positions, the process and the combined interest, and consider why your assumptions regarding the other party are right. Negotiation process, be as objective as possible, rule out your biases, use precedents wherever possible. If no precedents exist, get an offer from the other party, negotiate whole contracts, set the stage, explore issues, expand the pie and divide it. Increase the size of the pie and divide it up, and everybody will be happy. Use differences as effectively as possible, make offers, win with emotions, and reach a conclusion. For heaven's sake, end the discussion, reach a conclusion and move on. Why do people lie in negotiations? People may tend to lie in negotiations because they succumb to temptation. They may be attracted to the uncertainty, they may be attracted to whatever is to come. They enjoy the powerlessness of the others. They may lie to avoid hurting the other person's feelings, or to save face, their own face, or another person's face, or to defend themselves when they feel that they are being somehow attacked in some manner, or when they feel that the other person is being deceptive. They may lie to restore equality and justice when they feel they've been wronged, or they may lie to make a profit to avoid a loss. So it's not a very good idea, but these are some of the reasons why people lie. When do you disclose information in a negotiation situation? Disclosure is a good idea when the information is required by law, when information is in the public domain, when the information that could inspire reciprocation, if you have some information that could inspire reciprocation, when the information could be potentially damaging facts and needs. At that point, it is a good idea to disclose the information. When is disclosure not a good idea? When you have sensitive or privileged information, when you have information that isn't yours to share, when you have information that diminishes your power, or when you have information that may fluctuate, for example, the stock prices and stuff like that. Okay, 4-step model to conflict resolution. Again, we don't have time for this. I'll give you a strategy for conflict resolution that has been proposed by Lewis. It is a confrontation meeting. Again, many organizations do this. If the conflict reaches a part, negotiation falls through, conflict is so big it can't be resolved, it's organization wide, what do? One way that this can be handled is the confrontation meeting, where you have a climate setting session to start with. The top manager states the goals and sets an open, free tone of the meeting. Then you collect the information for the next 60 minutes. The representative players work in small heterogeneous teams. You make teams from different parts of the organization, get them together and they discuss and they tell you what they are bothered about or where they are facing problems. Then you share the information. Information sharing is the next step. Each team shares what they come up with and the information is compiled and categorized, and then you set priorities and plan group action. So you work in groups consisting of subordinates and supervisors, and you give them characterized lists and you say, what do you think should be the solution to this? And then that action planning takes place. Then you probably take a lunch break and come back after a nice fancy lunch in a fancy place, and then the top team gets together and says, okay, these are the solutions that have been proposed by our team, this is what we can and should do about it. And then you communicate these decisions to the people who are going to be working on them. And then you have a progress review after 4 to 6 weeks. So you say, we've communicated our decisions, now what have you thought about it? And that is one way of resolving conflicts. Again, this is a topic that's wide enough for a separate course on its own. I'm just giving you some bits and pieces here and there. So please take these leads and look for things yourself. Some consequences of conflict. We could have positive consequences of conflict, we could have negative consequences of conflict. Functional conflict, problems are addressed, opportunities for creativity, growth and improvement in performance come up. In dysfunctional or destructive conflict, it results in a break in the relationship, diverts energies, people get hurt, creates a negative environment, not very good. Again, the positive consequences of conflict could be people become closer to each other, new leadership could be brought in, old goals may be modified, outlets may be established, motivation and energy is increased, innovation can be increased, people may develop increased understanding, people get a chance to express themselves, they bond with each other, they start working better because the steam is out. So these are some of the positive consequences. The negative consequences are people get emotionally disturbed, resources are wasted, goals can be distorted, the organization can fall apart and stuff like that. Now, how do you manage conflict in high context cultures? Very, very important. Some strategies: be mindful of the phase maintenance assumptions of conflict situations that take place in a high context culture. The most important thing here is to maintain relationships, and that is something that you should really focus on. Be proactive in dealing with low grade conflict situations before they escalate into runaway, irrevocable, mutual face loss episodes. So, you know, deal with the conflict when it's just coming up and you should be okay. Save the other person's face. That is pretty much what the focus is on here, and be sensitive to feedback and observation, and be subtle about things. We've discussed high and low context cultures too much, so I'm not going to go into it. Practice alternative attentive listening skills, learn to modify pre-decided models of conflict resolution, and let go of the conflict situation if the other party doesn't want to attack it directly. What do you do in low context cultures? Again, separate the relationship from the problem, focus on resolving the substantive issues, be free and open while expressing opinions, engage in an assertive leveling style of conflict behavior, and own individual responsibility for the decision making process. Compartmentalize, focus on the problem, not the person, and you should be okay. Provide verbal feedback. Again, we talked about how people view conflict. So in light of that table on how you view conflict, let's go back to how people view conflict in high versus low context cultures. This is what we were talking about in the previous lecture. In light of this table, just figure out what the best strategies would be. You need to save face, you need to approach things in a manner that issues are compartmentalized, and keeping all those things in view, focus on the goal, and you should be okay. So use direct non-verbal messages, integrative verbal messages, not too many non-verbal messages. Be clear, don't be ambiguous. Clearly convey your concern over the goal, and tell people that relational issues are separate, substantive issues are separate, and you need to deal with these things separately. Commit to working out the conflict situation with the conflict party, and deal with the conflicting parties. Tell them that your main goal is to resolve the conflict, your main goal is to attack the conflict and iron out all the issues in the conflict, and your goal is not to attack the other person's self-image but to work through the issues. Now these things will have an implication for you, especially if you are in an intercultural, international business situation, and that is why we are discussing these. So please revise these. I've had to breeze through this, we were running out of time, there was noise in the background, but anyway, you can take care of these. What I would like you to revise for the next class is again the point here should be discussion, and this is what I don't like it when the computer thinks on its own. So please discuss what is negotiation, what is the connection between compliance, persuasion and negotiation, and what are the differences between integrative and distributive negotiation, and how may the differences listed above be manifested and dealt with in different cultures. You get it, you discussed this and you got it all, and this is pretty much what I wanted to tell you about negotiation and conflict management. We will move on to the other topics later, but please believe me when I say that this is not really the end. This is just the beginning of negotiations and conflict management. I've given you very small leading points, and please take these points and sort of move on and learn more on your own. I wish I could cover everything, but I cannot in such a short amount of time. So wish you all the best. Thank you.